Let's say China.
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 China. China. China. China. China.
There are next door neighbors, and you can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska.
You go over to China. China.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Trump statement, tweeting out insults to Angela Merkel. What's he doing?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host.
Yes. Hello, and welcome. I am James Andrews, and you are listening to So This Happened, the only news you need if you are not in a little bit of hot water because you cheated on your pregnant wife with a porn star. It is Friday, the 23rd of March, 2018, and I hope you all had an absolutely spectacular week. It was a busy one in the news, from Donald Trump's lawyer quitting, to Donald Trump and the porn stars, to Donald Trump. You see where I'm going with it? There's a lot of Donald Trump in the news. And we'll get to all that and more, I promise. But before we do, I would just like to say very quickly, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you have a spare second, just write a little review on Apple Podcasts or TuneIn Radio, wherever you're listening to here. Give us a review. It does help out with the show, and we massively appreciate it. But the first thing I want to talk about, it is Donald Trump. Okay, so it is Donald Trump. But he was in New Hampshire this week at a rally that he held. And he said a lot of fairly interesting things there. But the first thing I want you to listen to is, it's spectacular. This is Donald Trump telling you how to admit that you lost, but you didn't really lose. You'll remember a week or so ago, the Republicans lost pretty heavily to a little lamb in Pennsylvania. This was a place in Pennsylvania that Donald Trump won by over 20 points in the national general election. So this really is Trump country. They love him there, apparently. Although the Republicans couldn't manage a win. Now, it was a small victory, and in as far as the numbers, it was a massive victory as far as the Democrats, Republicans go. It was a small victory in the number of actual votes. It was really small. I mean, it was close. But Conor Lamb won. That's embarrassing to the Republicans. So Donald Trump put his own spin on it, which makes, well, absolutely no sense.
We're 5-0, and then we lost by 300 votes the other night, right? 300 out of 220 some odd thousand votes. 300 votes. And I will tell you, though, that area in Pennsylvania and all of Pennsylvania and all other states, they're energized. Because I made a speech there 2 nights before, and I'll tell you what, that crowd they were going. They were happy. They were thrilled. I wish I was running. Boy. Man, that was some energetic group. And it was close. It was really close. We went in there. They were down. Good man, Rick Saccone, good man. And didn't quite make it. But think of it, lost by about 300 votes out of all of those votes. So it's pretty incredible. But we can't let it happen. We have to win.
There it is. It's so good. I love it. There's Donald Trump. He's sort of saying, well, we won. Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, we lost by 300 votes, but because it was only 300 votes, we really won, guys, because people in Pennsylvania love us. I mean, they love me, really. They love me. They love me so much that we only lost by 300 votes. Granted, we won by quite a lot when I was running for president. Now I'm president. We still won by losing only 300 votes. It was that close. You see what I'm saying? So it sort of... it makes no sense, does it? It literally makes no sense. What he said there is I don't even have a word for it. I mean, bullshit springs to mind, but that's not even enough, is it really? It's amazing. We won because we lost, but only by 300 votes. So that's great, because think about it, 200,000 votes, we only lost by 300, so that's easy. So yes, if you can follow that logic, you're a better person than I am. And I just want to take a second, if I may, to rant. I know I don't do that very often. I'm not really a big ranter, but I saw something on Twitter this week which really hit home, and I thought it was very sad, but also very true, and I think it deserves a little chat. There was a lady on Twitter, and I'm not going to reveal her name, and I'm actually not going to read the tweet. But the gist of the tweet, she was saying that she's 57 years old, she's been married to this man for 30 years, and they knew that they had slight political differences. She's always been Democratic, he's always been Republican, but it was never really a big deal. They disagreed on a few small things, but generally, they got along pretty well. 30 years married, you would hope so. But in this tweet, she said, I don't know what to do, and I need help, and I'm asking for you guys help, because my husband has changed. He has become a monster. He has become racist. He has become xenophobic. He is just a really nasty human being right now, and I don't know what to do. She even mentioned that she was thinking that divorce might be the only way forward and out of the situation. And I spent about an hour reading the replies to this lady. There were literally thousands of them. And this isn't somebody that has a massive amount of followers. I think she only had a couple of hundred followers. But there was thousands of responses on there to her. A lot of them were saying, you know what? Chin up. You've got to do what's right for you. But a huge percentage of them were people relaying the exact same stories. My husband, my wife, mainly husband, let's be honest. My husband has changed completely since Donald Trump became president, and I thought I was the only one. It was really giving people this sense of community, knowing that they are not the only ones that feel that a loved one has changed not for the better since Donald Trump became president. Now, one of the comments on there asked her, was your husband always a racist? Was he always this way? And the lady responded, no, we've been married 30 years and he's never been racist. He's always been a fantastic chap, but all of a sudden he's now a massive racist. And this got me to thinking, because I have a personal story which is exactly the same as this. My best friend in the entire world, we've known each other for a long time. We've been on vacation together. We've done a lot of stuff together. Our families are very close. We've always had different political views. He's always been a conservative sort of Republican chap, and I am the opposite of that. And it wasn't that we avoided talking about politics. We did it all the time. We'd sit down with a beer and we'd chat about it. Now, we'd disagree with each other, but it was always friendly, and there was a little bit of rib poking here and there, but it was never vicious. It was always friendly, and then afterwards we'd just talk about something else and we'd carry on. But unfortunately, since November 2016, my friend has changed. Now, it started a little bit before that when Donald Trump was winning. We went on vacation during the primaries, and we had not a heated discussion, but it was bordering on heated about the whole Donald Trump thing. Since Donald Trump's become president, it's with a very heavy heart. I don't really like to tell this story, but I think it's important. Other people have shared their stories, so I'll share mine with you. I don't know if we're friends anymore. He has said a few very nasty and direct things to me, and not face to face, but he's done them on Facebook, and not on the show page, but on my personal Facebook page where only friends and family are invited. I use a different name. I know, it's sneaky, isn't it? It's very clever. But he was on that, and he was writing these things on my wall where everybody could see, and they were pretty vile, and they were pretty disgusting, and they were also just not true. Now, the lady on the original Twitter post, in fact, blamed Facebook. She said it's Facebook's fault because my husband gets on there and he sees all these articles that pop up from Breitbart and Fox News and other conservative websites where they're just telling stories that are not true. I don't think Facebook has anything to do with this, I'll be honest. If you click on a story and read it, that's not Facebook's fault. You're clicking on the story, you're reading it, and whatever information you glean from that, and if you believe it's true, then that's on you, not Facebook. Where I do put the blame is very solidly on Donald Trump. Now, I've had this discussion with many people where they said, no, Donald Trump's not racist, he's just very forthright and he speaks his mind. I happen to believe Donald Trump is a racist. I don't think there's any doubt in that. Whether he is or not, is somewhat immaterial to this story. What Donald Trump has done is he has empowered people that feel that way to express their feelings. This lady, when she was asked if her husband's always been a racist, she was very quick to say, no, 30 years we've been married, he never has been, he's a lovely chap. I suspect it was there all the time. I don't think you go to bed one day saying, I love everybody, and you wake up in the morning and you go, fucking hell, it's the black people and the fucking Muslims, I fucking hate them, I fucking hate them all. I don't think that's happening, right? It's just that's not happening. These things are always there, they're buried, but until recently, in polite society, you couldn't say them. You couldn't say, oh, it's the Muslims' fault. Bloody Muslims and the bloody Mexicans coming over here stealing our fucking jobs. The fucking Mexicans, send them back. People kind of looked at you and went, ooh, that's a bit, what's that? That's a bit rude. You couldn't say that. Now, Donald Trump has said these things. The people he's hired in his administration, well, look at them, right? Jeff Sessions, the racist elf. Steve Bannon, the racist drunk uncle. All these people send a message out, and these people who have had these feelings, but they've kept them buried very, very deep because they didn't want to offend anybody and they didn't want to look like a douchebag, all of a sudden they can say, oh, you know what, the president's saying that, so I think I'm okay, I'm going to say that, fucking hell, I'm going to stand up, it's the fucking Muslims' fault, it's fucking blacks' fault, it's fucking Mexicans' fault, not my fault, make America white again. Because that has to be it, right? There's no way that these feelings just develop overnight, or you read one story from Breitbart or Fox News and say, oh wow, yeah, they're right, never thought about it before, but shit, they're right. If America was full of white people, it would be a great place. It would be nirvana. It would be fantastic. So these feelings, they have to be there. These ideas, these sort of insidious ideas that people have, which they now feel okay to express, before they had to hide them. But I think they were probably always there. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that every single person that likes Donald Trump is a racist. That would be ridiculous. There are people who are massively misinformed, and there are people who just don't give a shit, right? They vote Republican. That's what they've always done. Donald Trump ran as a Republican. They supported him. But there is that group of people who were, for all intents and purposes, massively racist, but they had to hide it. Well, they're the ones who are now empowered by this administration to say what they really believe. And I think that's really sad. I put a poll up on Twitter the other day asking if people had relationships damaged or destroyed since Donald Trump became president. A staggering 71% of people that responded to the survey said yes, they had a relationship destroyed by Donald Trump. And there's something very wrong with that, isn't there? And I think the conclusion that you come to is Donald Trump is just a cunt. That is Mrs. Andrews' word, not mine. So if you have a problem with that, take it up with her. That was her word. She said that. She did. She said horrible things about him. I know, I love her. I really do. But then with all that being said, what is the solution? Well, unfortunately, I don't have one. I don't know if there is a solution because, like I say, when these things come to light, it's very difficult to forget about them. And we probably shouldn't forget about them. If we interact with someone on a daily basis who we thought was an okay person, and it turns out they're a prick, then they're probably just going to be a prick always. And that's a tough thing to deal with. And I feel sorry for anybody in that situation. Anyway, rant is over. I know you're probably very happy that the rant is over and we can move on to something else. But we're not going to stray too far from the subject in hand. Donald Trump today, Friday, signed the bill, the $1.3 trillion bill to fund the government until September, thereby keeping the government open instead of shutting down tomorrow. Now, this morning, Donald Trump had tweeted out that he was considering vetoing the bill, which caused massive panic on Capitol Hill because most of the congressmen and senators had already left for their recess. So there's Donald Trump saying, I might just veto this bill, but guess what? He didn't veto the bill. He signed it, and then he said, I will never sign a bill like this again because nobody read it. Which I assume means that he didn't read it either. And of course, then he went on to say, oh, it's not a great bill. There's a lot of things in it I don't like, but I signed it anyway because we've made such a brilliant strides. And he waffled. He did the Donald Trump thing where he said, yeah, we've done so well. If I didn't sign this bill, it would just be terrible and everything would go down the toilet. I suspect the real reason he signed the bill was that the pressure on him was absolutely tremendous. He's under a lot of heat. The last thing he needs is more heat, and vetoing a bill when everybody's already gone home would be, well, it would be tricky and it would put him in a lot of hot water. Anyway, the government stays open. But what the bill doesn't do is address the Dreamers, the DACA Act, if you will. That was one of the big sticking points for the Democrats, was it has to have something about DACA in there, it has to give them a pathway to citizenship, it has to make it so we don't deport all these people. Well, the bill that was signed today had nothing in there about the Dreamers. So, on the surface, the Democrats are cheering and saying, we've got a victory, we won, yes, Donald Trump signed it. But the reality of it's a little trickier than that, isn't it? Because what they really wanted in that bill isn't in that bill. Now, it keeps the government open till September, and I assume that they're going to keep talking and talking and talking. But in the meantime, there are 700,000 Dreamers who are now going, oh, okay, so now where do we stand? Because we were told that it would all be sorted out when the bill was signed. The bill's been signed, and we still have no idea if we're going to be deported or not. Could somebody please tell us? There was one small victory for Democrats in the bill that was signed today, and that is on Donald Trump's wall. He had asked for $25 billion to build the wall. He didn't get quite that much. He actually got $1.6 billion, which he's actually quite happy about because he said, well, now we can start to build the wall, which is... I love this idea because you've got these Mexican bricklayers, let's be honest, they're Mexicans going to lay the wall, aren't they? I mean, they're going to be building the wall. They're sort of going to get to about 3 feet high and go, right, fuck it, that's the 1.6 billion. It's not exactly protective though, Donald, because watch, you can step over it. You can literally just step over the wall. I'm in Mexico. I'm in the US. I'm in Mexico, and now I'm in the US. I think it needs to be taller. But for now, Donald is just going to have to be content with his knee-high wall. And the Democrats will just have to be happy with the fact that they did, in fact, outmaneuver the president on this one issue, and that's going to make them feel quite good. Even though they didn't get everything they wanted in there, they know they got one up on Donald, and that's going to make them sleep a little better tonight. But one person who will not be sleeping better tonight is Rex Tillerson. The former Secretary of State took to the podium today and made a statement to the press.
This can be a very mean-spirited town. But you don't have to choose to participate in that. Each of us get to choose the person we want to be and the way we want to be treated and the way we will treat others. God bless you all, your loved ones. God bless America.
Okay, bye Rex. Have a good one. Rex's replacement, Mike Pompeo, who is best known as the CIA director. He's only held that position for a short period. Donald Trump gave it to him when he was elected. And it will come as absolutely no surprise to anybody, I'm sure, that before Mr. Pompeo was the director of the CIA, he was an oil man. And of course he was, right? Because it seems that Donald Trump, when he's thinking about appointing someone, he says, hey, do you have any connections with oil? Or coal? Coal's good too, but oil or coal, you do. You're in. You don't. Fuck off. Not interested. Okay, so that's how it goes, isn't it? Anyway, his tenure with the CIA was not without its controversies. He told the audience at a national security summit that the Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election didn't affect its outcome. The CIA were then very quick to release a statement clarifying his remarks, and they said, I quote, "The intelligence assessment with regard to Russian meddling has not changed, and the director did not intend to suggest it had." End quote. Even though he said, yeah, they didn't affect the outcome at all, then the CIA says, oh, fuck, no, he didn't mean what he said. He said it, but he didn't mean it. You see what I'm saying? He said something, but he didn't mean it. Anyway, he's no longer with the CIA. He's now the Secretary of State, which, even though we sort of saw it coming, it's still a bit of a, oh, okay, right, great. Anyway, he's had many dealings with Donald Trump. He was the man that gave him his daily intelligence briefings, which I realise the words intelligence, Donald Trump, some people may have a hard time putting the two together. Anyway, here's what he said when he was asked about how the daily briefings go.
The president asks hard questions. He's deeply engaged. We'll have rambunctious back and forth, all aimed at making sure we're delivering him the truth as best we understand it. He'll ask questions from time to time that we frankly don't have the answer to. We didn't bring it, or we weren't as complete as we needed to be. We'll go back and within a couple of hours deliver that information as best we can.
I love that. Because when I picture that, I sort of see Donald Trump sitting there behind his big empty desk, and they say, "Do you have any questions, Mr. President?" And you see Donald just kind of going, "Yeah, I do actually, because this one's been puzzling me for a while." I was watching a film the other day, and it had all these penguins in the Antarctic or the Arctic. I don't remember if it was north or south, but that's immaterial. What I want to know, though, they're all standing around and they're shivering and they're really cold. Why the fuck don't they just go somewhere warm? See what I'm saying? It's confusing. And you can see the CIA guys, Mike Pompeo going, wow, shit, I hadn't thought about that, actually. That's a good point. I mean, they look so cold. They look miserable, don't they, all huddled together? If they just went somewhere warm, I mean, Africa, for instance, right? Then they wouldn't have to huddle together. There'd just be penguins in Africa. It would be, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you on that, Mr. President. I'm going to go find out. And so there he is, the new Secretary of State. Now, last week on the episode, we joked around a little bit about how Donald Trump was probably going to fire McMaster's and replace him with a banana or a pineapple. Well, he has been replaced, and not exactly by a banana, but by a man called John Bolton. He is a very, very conservative man who rose to prominence in the George W. Bush years. So that gives you a little indication of who he is. And to be honest, he makes McMaster's look like a little, a snowflake. That's what they like to say, isn't it? Yeah, it makes him look like a snowflake. Here's a few things that John Bolton is in favour of. He believes that a preemptive strike against North Korea is perfectly justified. He said, I quote, "Given the gaps in US intelligence about North Korea, we should not wait until the very last minute. It is perfectly legitimate for the United States to respond to the current necessity posed by North Korea's nuclear weapons by striking first." End quote. Just the kind of man you would want in charge, right? But it gets better, because he also thinks that bombing Iran would probably be okay. He argued that a first strike against Iran and then send troops in to enact regime change would be an okay thing to do. He's also not a big fan of the UN. He once said in a speech, and I quote, "There is no United Nations. There is an international community that occasionally can be led by the only real power left in the world, and that's the United States, and when it suits our interests, and when we can get others to go along." End quote. Well, I think, I'm no expert, but I think there probably is a United Nations. The statement there is no United Nations, well, there is, because I've seen them on television. I've seen them in person as well. The little blue hats that they wear with a band that says UN, which is a clue to me that they do exist, but each to their own, I suppose. And he also believes that the Iraq War was not a mistake, which is interesting because Donald Trump is very, very happy to say, whenever you ask him, I was against the Iraq War, even though he wasn't. I was against it. It was a stupid thing to do. But you can be pretty sure that in the next week or so, Donald Trump will probably change his mind on that and say, you know what, I've thought about it and I've talked to people and I think probably the Iraq War was good. We could probably even go for number 2 if you want. I'd be up for that. So gosh, 2 new appointments in 1 week. Is it a record? Well, 5 years ago, yes, but in the current administration, no, it's been a slow week, hasn't it, really? And now.
Just the facts, mammy. Just the facts, mammy. Just the facts, mammy. Just the facts, mammy.
Yes, it is that time of the week where we look at the facts. This is where we take a topic that you are told certain things by friends, family, the media, and then we look and discover if indeed it's true or, I hate the word, but fake news. I suppose that's 2 words, isn't it? Fake and news, not 1 word together. It's like bullshit. You know what I mean? Is that 1 word or 2 words? Is it bullshit or is it bullshit? I never know. When I'm writing it, I don't write it very often, but if I'm writing, that's bullshit, do I separate the 2 words? I don't know. Anyway, that's a tangent. That's not what we're going to talk about. That is not the fact that we're looking at today, although that would be a good one, but that's not what we're looking at today. What I want to look at is whether or not illegal immigrants are taking the jobs of hard-working Americans, because that is what we have been told by Donald Trump certainly, but also by a lot of media outlets saying, oh, they come in here and they take our fucking jobs and then they rape our women and it's just awful. It's horrible. Build that bloody wall. Okay, so are illegal immigrants, specifically from Mexico, because that's really what people talk about, isn't it, when they say illegals? They're not talking about the illegal Irish or the illegal English. I don't think they would care. But if you're brownish, then you're bad. Keep away from me. So, are the illegals taking jobs from America? Well, the quick answer is no. All right, now on to the next. No, that's not the end of it. The answer is no. But now I'm going to equip you with some weapons. So when someone says to you, yeah, but the fucking illegals are taking all the jobs, you'll be able to say, well, actually, that's not entirely true. And here is why. So, are you ready? Because as they say, knowledge is power. So, that's a really silly phrase, isn't it? But anyway, knowledge is power. Here we go. Now, all this information is coming from a report that was published in the National Academics of Science, Engineering and Medicine. See, right off the bat, that sounds good, doesn't it? It's very legitimate. The National Academies, it's very good. So, this is what the report found. An economics professor at Cornell University who led the group that published the report, a Francine Blau, said at the end of the report, and quote, "We found little to no negative effects on overall wages and employment of native-born workers in the longer term." The report even went on to say that some immigrants who had arrived in an earlier generation but were still in the same low-wage labour markets as the new crop of immigrants coming in, they had a hard time finding jobs. So it seems it's not Americans or people that were born in America who who were having a hard time finding a job. It was actually immigrants who had come earlier were then finding it hard to get a job because new immigrants who were coming in, they'd work for a little bit cheaper, so they were taking the jobs from the other illegal immigrants. And that's a horrible thing. When anybody doesn't have a job, it's a horrible thing, but you can't really say, oh, they're taking jobs from Americans. Well, no, I mean, if it makes you feel better, you can say, yeah, the illegals are coming in and taking other jobs from other illegals. Well, then your argument falls apart a little bit, doesn't it? Now, the report did find that teenagers, US citizen teenagers who did not finish high school, they saw their hours of work reduced by immigrants, although it also found that it was not affecting their ability to find jobs. The report then went on to say that when young people drop out of high school, they are always going to struggle to find work. And it wasn't the fact that there were illegal immigrants coming in, it was just the fact that they didn't finish high school. And, well, if you don't finish high school, it's hard to get a job. Now, I could very easily just leave it there and say, yes, that report said that, but that would only be one source, and I want to give you more sources. The Brookings Senior Fellow, Vonda Felhab-Brown, she explained in an essay she wrote, which was directly targeting Donald Trump's idea of building a wall, she said that the illegal immigrants coming into the US are not really stealing the jobs that US people has, as Donald Trump and others would have you believe. The reality is, the undocumented workers, when they come in, they are doing the unpleasant, the backbreaking jobs that the native-born workers are not willing to do. She went on to say that a lot of the jobs that the undocumented workers do are things like gutting fish or working on a farm, picking the crops. These are jobs that most Americans feel are below them. And that brings me to another point which isn't in the report. This is my own report that I'm writing right now. There's a certain sense of entitlement, I think, when you're born in the West, and that's whether it's Britain or whether it's the US. You sort of think to yourself, well, I was born here, I have, rights to be happy and etc. And I'm not going to gut fish, I'm not going to pick a fucking tomato from a field. That's below me. I deserve something much better than that. And that's an entirely different problem, isn't it? That's got nothing to do with undocumented workers coming into the US and taking jobs from people. That's got to do with the fact that because we're born in the West, we're born in this essentially very luxurious society, we feel entitled to have something that gives us stature, and working in a field doesn't necessarily do that. It's also been suggested in some circles that undocumented workers coming in actually is very important and helps the US economy, particularly in places where domestic migration is not high. So some of those states where people have sort of moved out of, but they still have massive rural areas where there's lots of farm work to be done, these undocumented workers coming in actually help the US economy, and without them it would be very bad indeed, because you're not going to get some kid who's just dropped out of high school to move from wherever he is to the Midwest to pick potatoes or something along those lines. That's not happening. So in some instances, undocumented workers coming in is actually essential to the US economy. So there you go. The next time somebody says to you, yeah, but all these illegals are fucking stealing jobs, you can say to them, well, actually, that's just not true, because this is what James Andrews told me, and I believe him. Anyway, on from undocumented workers to two old queens. That's an impossible transition to make. I am referring to, of course, Sir Rod Stewart and Sir Elton John. They're in a little bit of a feud right now. Elton John recently announced that he would be doing a farewell tour, and we joked on the show that only Elton John would do a farewell tour that lasts 3 years. Most people say, this is it, last concert, and then I'm retiring. Elton John said, no, fuck that. 3 years, I'm going to do concerts, and then I'm going to retire. Well, Sir Rod Stewart had a few things to say about that. He said, it stinks of selling tickets, and that it is not rock and roll. And there's two things there, Rod. I have to point out there. When he says that announcing a concert is sort of stinking of selling tickets, isn't that the point? I mean, I'm not a rock star, but surely if you announce a concert, it's so you can sell tickets, right? I mean, you're not giving them away for free. I'm pretty sure Rod's not giving away his tickets, right? If you go see him in Vegas or wherever he's at right now, it's not free. He's not just saying, oh no, have the tickets, because it's just not rock and roll if you have to pay for them. It's not rock and roll. So have the tickets, man, because that's fucking rock and roll. It's a bit silly, isn't it, really? I mean, to say, oh no, I mean, he just wants to sell tickets. Of course he wants to fucking sell tickets. He's a pop star. He's an entertainer. That's the whole goal. That's been the goal since, 1970 or whenever he started. It was to sell tickets. Of course he's selling tickets. And then Rod went on to say, because he was very upset by the whole thing, that this was a retirement tour. He didn't like that at all. He said, I quote here, "I've never spoken about it, and if I do retire, I won't make an announcement. I'll just fade away." He said that retirement tours were dishonest. I hope you remember that, Rod, because in a few years, mate, if you say, this is it, this is my last tour, I'm going to be all over you. I'm going to say, oh, that's just not rock and roll, Rod. Telling everyone this is your last show. No, I think he wants to be up there and literally just stroke out on stage. That's fucking rock and roll. I mean, it's a silly thing, isn't it? I don't even know why I mention it, but I really like Elton John. I quite like Rod Stewart now. I don't know. Which one's more rock and roll, though? I don't know. Neither of them really, are they? They're just two old chaps now. Well, I'll tell you who is rock and roll, though. Well, we're on this. Who's old? And he's Keith Richards, right? I mean, that fucking... I mean, he's amazing. He's out there drinking and smoking all day long. I mean, that's rock and roll. Keith's never going to retire, man. He's never going to retire. I think he's so fossilised at this point that he will just be up there. He probably won't be able to move much. They'll have to, have him propped up on stage. But so long as his fingers can go, he'll be playing, man. That's rock and roll. And now, before this episode descends into complete silliness, I think it's about time that we go have a chat with the Philosopher. He's been in his garden all day today, and he's been thinking about what he wanted to say to you, and I haven't heard it, but he said the message is very timely. I don't know what that means, so it might be about Elton John or Rod Stewart. Probably not, but anyway, let's head into the garden.
Welcome to my garden. Come on in, let's chat a while.
A still more better world. When our children were little, they learned at Sunday school that Mr. Noah built an ark, the people thought it such a lark. They sang with gusto and glee as down came the rain in torrents, and only 8 were saved, splish splash. Great fun was had by all, and they rehearsed the destruction of the world. The myth of the ark contains 2 persisting themes. First, the world is very bad, so bad that God had no choice but to destroy it. Second, the good are so few, a small minority who must take refuge in the ark and batten down the hatches against the wickedness all around. In today's culture wars, the warring sides find little agreement. Perhaps ironically, the only points of agreement are that the world is a terrible place, getting worse each day, and we few are the only righteous ones left. Both right and left replay the gloomy themes in the ever-present super-invasive media. Good news doesn't sell newspapers, and pundits to the right and left remind us constantly of the coming apocalypse. When tragedies happen, it reinforces the apocalyptic predictions. The terrible Florida school shootings a few weeks ago reinforced the doomsayers. The horror of calculated, systematic and random killing in a school is our worst nightmare. Though it ought to be unthinkable, our imagination takes us to the possibility that it might be our children, our friends, ourselves caught in the horror. We want to respond, we need to respond, but we don't know how to respond. Heart's ache for those who are caught up in it. To the left, mass murders like that are a sure sign that the world is slipping rapidly into violent chaos. To the right, mass murders are signs to reach for more personal weapons to ward off the bad guys. Both responses are predictable. I share neither perspective. I was reading recently Steven Pinker's new book, Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism and Progress. The book is the much-awaited follow-on from his 2012 The Better Angels of Our Nature. Like his earlier book, Pinker here offers a perspective on the state of the world at odds with the media doom peddling. Taken long term, on just about any measurement, the world is better now than it was. It's a counterintuitive thesis. We're attuned to the idea that things are always getting worse. Events like the Florida shooting prove it. Yet terrible though this was, and I do not want to minimize the grief of those who are suffering, taken long term, we are safer now than we have ever been. Mass killings are terrible events. Yet the homicide rate in the United States, that's the number of homicides per 100,000 of the population, is drastically down from over 90 in the 17th century to 5 in 2015. Even the recent peak of around 10 in 1980 has been halved in the last 30 years. In New England, the rate hovers around 1 homicide per 100,000 of the population, in line with much of Western Europe. In another comparison, in the USA in 2015, 15,696 people were murdered, still too far high a number, but 35,398 died in motor vehicle accidents and 136,053 died in accidents of other sorts, out of a total of 2,626,418 deaths. This, of course, does not diminish the suffering of those who lose loved ones to brutality, but it's a different and needed perspective. Though we grieve with those who grieve in the long term, that we're making progress is a necessary perspective for our mental health. Nor does this perspective mean we stop working toward a better society. One mass shooting is one too many. Much remains to be done. And we set ourselves to the task through education and care and political work and action. The myth of Noah's Ark ends with hope. In that story, God is sorry that the world was destroyed and God promises never to do it again. Rainbows remind us of God's promise. The point of the story is not the terribleness of the world, but that whatever the state of the world, there is hope. Even so, the bow in the sky is often forgotten. We seem to be more comfortable with the doom and gloom of the impending flood. Against the trend, I shall fix my eyes on the bow in the sky and take solace in the long-term signs of progress and work for a still better world. Be kind to each other today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Philosopher. That was lovely, as always. Food for thought, as they say. Anyway, unfortunately, we are out of time for this week, which is a shame because I had so much more to talk to you about. But, well, we'll have to wait till next week. All that is left for me to do is wish you all an absolutely wonderful week. I had a good conversation with you as always, and we can continue it on Twitter or Facebook if you would like. And please Again, don't forget to subscribe and like the podcast and leave a little review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this, and recommend it to a friend so we can spread the So This Happened news around. Anyway, everybody take care and be excellent. Bye bye.